Now, before I became a full-time musician, what originally started me into learning bass was playing in church, which I have now been doing for over 18 years now. From church services to church conferences to playing with award-winning Christian music artists, I've experienced many sides of playing within a church setting. But a question that has been asked to me for all these years now is, what is the best bass amp for me to buy for my church? Now, in today's church and music world, the bass amp has had some different purposes than it's had in the past, which makes this question just a little bit harder to answer than it used to be. So today, I wanted to share what features you should be looking for when buying a church bass amp and breaking down why I got this new Ashdown Rootmaster III as the new bass amp for my church. So make sure you stick around until the end, because I'm going to be showing you how this bass amp sounds and works in a live music setting in a church service. I want to give a huge thank you to Sweetwater for sponsoring today's video. Now, the first question we have is, how are bass amps used in church? Now, the purpose of a bass amp in a church has changed a little bit because of the way technology has changed over the years. You don't see as many bass amps as you used to see in church settings. Now, the reason that is because we have what we call bass DIs. And all a bass DI does is that it goes from 1/4 inch and it converts it to XLRs, and that goes directly into the sound console or audio system of your church. Now, with particular ones that are specified for bass, they have controls. They kind of make it richer, more warm. They kind of make it just sound a little bit more like an amp than just if you just plugged it straight into the sound system. Now, the reason this is because audio engineers can have complete control of the sound coming from off the stage and in the room. Because what happens when you start putting amps on stage and they're really loud is that they don't have any control to be able to turn it down or change the tone of it so it can cut out and be more even in the mix. Now, with that said, this has always been a controversial thing with musicians, especially bass players, because it's like, oh, well, I can't feel the bass anymore. That's why the reason why I started playing bass, because I can feel it in my chest. So the way that I use this in church is that I just have my amp right there beside me, right by the drum cage. And I have it loud enough for me, the keys player, and the drummer to be able to feel the bass, but I don't have it so loud that people really hear the bass amp in the audience. Now, the 4 purposes of a bass amp in church, in my opinion, are: 1, to fill the low end on stage for the musicians and the band; 2, to have consistent output to the sound system no matter what bass player is playing; 3, to have a versatile amp that can be used and accommodate multiple styles of bass players; and 4 is to have an amp that has some effects settings if your bass player that you have is like either new or they don't have any effects or anything like that. They can have something that they can work with on the amp itself. So real quick before we get back into the video, I've been looking at my analytics on my channel the past few months, and over 80% of you guys who watch my videos on a regular basis are not subscribed. So if you guys like my videos, like my content, please consider subscribing, and I'll make a promise to you that each one of my videos will get bigger, better, and more valuable for you. Now, some of the main features I look for in a bass amp is compression and drive. Now, compression is not something I always use on a bass amp, but I like to have that effect there just in case like there's another bass player that doesn't have a pedal board, or if you want to have some distortion on there without having to put a drive pedal on when you come to church. Sometimes you just don't want to have to plug a big pedal board in every time you come to church. You just want to plug straight in. And so having compression and drive in an amp for me is a necessary thing, just in case I don't have a pedal board or anything like that. I can still dial in on my amp. Now, the next huge feature I always look for is a 3-band EQ. And the reason why that is because I'm not really using the EQ portion when I'm using the, going direct from the amp head or anything like that. I'm only using that sound for the output in the cabinet. Sometimes you don't really want that high end for it to cut through the crowd and cut through all the noise. You kind of want to just feel it. So sometimes I want to just boost the low end, pull back the high end a little bit, and just so you can feel it while you have your headphones on. And so that's the reason why at least a 3-band EQ, which is to be low, mids, and highs, or bass, mid, and treble, is so vital for me, because I like to just feel it and know that I have that there. Now, if you find one that has more than that, that's great. If it has too many, sometimes that could be really, really confusing for a lot of players. If you have different levels, like a beginner player and then somebody who's more advanced. A more advanced person probably could do it, but it could just make it not as simple as it could be. So if you're looking for a bass amp, 3-band EQ is a great option. Now, a non-negotiable feature for any bass amp nowadays for me is having a good XLR or direct output. Now, basically what this is a DI built into the head of a bass amp. Now, like I said before, bass amps used to be the DI all the time, but now they've separated that and it's just like, oh, you can just have a straight up DI for bass and just get rid of the cabinet all in itself, which, like I said, is cool. But the thing is that if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have that feeling on stage and you want something that's consistent no matter what bass player comes in, have your XLR come out of your bass amp and go into the system. And the reason why I think this is a real big, like, non-negotiable thing is because if you have a really clear and like nice gain set already for that XLR output on your amp, that's gonna help your audio engineers so they don't have to regain every time a new bass player comes in. They have to put a new gain structure every single time. You can have maybe a one setting or different things like that. And you can know your bass players in that way of like, oh, if somebody has a passive bass, active bass, it just makes it easier for if you have multiple players in a church. Now, another crucial feature for me is that it has a mute switch. Now, I don't really use a mute switch all that often on bass amps when I play it because I have a tuner pedal. But when you have different levels of players, some that don't have pedals or don't have anything, you want them to be able to mute and unplug their bass, because a lot of times what happens is that if you have an active bass, you leave that bass plugged in for an hour and a half service the whole time, and you can't like signal to the sound guy, hey, mute the bass so I can unplug. You need a way of being able to like mute it, because if it stays plugged in the whole service is gonna run your battery out on your active bass. So having a mute, even if you already have like a tuner pedal, is just good for those who don't have a tuner pedal that mutes. Now, this is a little side feature that I actually kind of like, which is having a bass amp that allows for you to mute the EQ, because sometimes these bass amps have EQs on them and they don't sound that great. And you don't really want that, and you just want a good, clean XLR direct out signal. And so if you have one that could mute the EQ or you can bypass the EQ, that is great. Now, another extra feature that's not, 100% like non-negotiable or anything is having a headphone output. This is just like a one if you had like something happening and somebody doesn't have somewhere to practice at home, they can have a place, be able to plug into the amp and have like an aux out or something so they can hook their phone up to it and be able to practice silently as well. This is not something that I would say is a non-negotiable feature, but it's just a nice little extra thing to have for bass players who don't have any equipment. Now, the last few things is like having a bass amp that's not too stylized. And when I say not too stylized, there's some bass amps that are really directed towards a certain style of music, like rock or gospel or funk or anything like that. Now, if all of your bass players agree and they like this certain type of amp, great, do it. But don't just, choose one because you think it's the best. Actually see what the consensus is of your team of bass players, because sometimes it could just be, if you're playing gospel music at your church all the time, GK is a great, amp with that. Or if you have like an Aguilar, that's another great one for like more of a gospel setting. But sometimes if you have like a really worship church or really worship type church, having like an Ampeg may be what you want to go for. There's so many different styles of, different bass amps that you don't want to get one that's not the style of what your church is and also what the bass players you have is. Now, for a lot of people, y'all are not gonna like this next one, but this is just a reality we all face when it comes to just amps. And something I realized just playing over the years is that you need to find a bass amp that has punchy tone, that's not too bright. Because I feel like a lot of us, I have bright tone a lot of times when I play gospel, but you don't want it to be too bright, because what happens is that when you have different levels of players in your church, you have a beginner, you have an intermediate, you may have an advanced player. What brightness does to your bass is it accentuates all your techniques and your mistakes. So if you don't fret something right, you hear that immediately when you have something, a bright tone. But if you have something that's punchy, it still cuts through and it feels really, really good, but it's not so bright that you hear like if you have like fret buzz or something like that from a beginner that's just can't, you know, press down on the fret enough. Now, that's not something you have to abide by. A lot of these are just opinions, okay? But that's a real good idea of doing that. That's something, part of the reason why I got this Rootmaster 3, because it has a really punchy sound. And we have bass players of a lot of different levels at my church. So that is the reason why I was like, oh man, having something punchy would probably be good. Now the last one is pretty obvious. A bass amp that's not too big and not too loud. And what I mean by not too big is like a 410 is about as big as I'm gonna get at a church. A 410-inch speaker cabinet like this Ashdown Rootmaster 3 is about as big as I think any church should probably have on their stage. If you have an 810, you better be playing in like a massive room, because that's definitely going to be projected into the audience at a very, very loud volume, because what's the point of having it if you're not going to crank it up? You know what I'm saying? And honestly, with my 410, I don't even crank it up too loud. I just make sure I can feel it. So just make sure you find one that's good for your church, good for your sanctuary, your stage, wherever you're at, that fits well. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a 410. It could be a 112, or it could be a 212, or, you know, a 110. So just look out for that whenever you're looking for a bass amp. So real quick, before we get back to the video, I just had to mention a few items that I used into the shooting of today's video and a lot of the videos on my channel that I haven't really shown before. If you watched my renovation video of my studio, you probably learned that I have never personally owned a tripod. And so the one that I just recently got is this one by Magnus tripod. And man, it is super, super nice. It's very, very heavy duty. Probably one that I'm probably gonna have forever. And then also something else that I've used for my videos is the 4K Blvd monitor screen. It's like maybe like a 7 or 8 inch screen that I use just to make sure I get the best shots in my room, because sometimes on a camera, the screen's so small that you can't really even see what's really happening and what's in your shot. And the last piece that I just recently added to my gear list was these newer wireless lapel mics. Oh my gosh, these have been like a bit of a game changer. You've probably seen them on some of the videos that I've posted, like the one where I was recording bass outside with my phone, my Timu bass building video. There's been a few videos that I've been using them. I haven't really said anything about them, but they are really incredible if you are a content creator or somebody who's looking for something that's not too expensive or anything like that, that are really an affordable option. I think they're just around $100. So if any of you guys are interested, or content creators are interested in any of this kind of stuff, please check it out in the description below to where you can find all the specs and get a really good deal. Now, the reason I got this Rootmaster 3 is because it has all of these settings and features that I love for a church setting. Because if it was my own personal amp, that's one thing. You know, I have my own personal amp and I love it to stay at home. But when I go to the church, sometimes I wanted to just be versatile, not just based off of my own personal preferences. And so because of that, I went with the Ashdown Rootmaster 3. Now it has a mute switch that has a light that's really, really nice for, you know, bass players if they don't have a mute. It has compression that's really easy to use. I think it's like a 1-knob compression. It has a dirt channel where you can have drive, and it's not a bad sounding drive. It actually sounds really good. It has a shape button to kind of get more of that scoop tone where it's got real nice low end, and it really, really, really feels good. And it also has a EQ that you turn on and off to go into your direct signal, which is really, really nice, because I remember when I first cut it on, I was like, I don't know if I love all the EQ stuff. You know, I wanted to just be flat. And so I turned it off and it sounded amazing to me. I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Now, what's really cool about the cabinet is that it has a switch on the back that activates different levels of the tweeter. You can also cut it off as well, so you don't get as much highs if you don't want them. So I will say this, the amp head is really, really light, but it feels good. It doesn't feel cheap, but it is very, very light. And the amp cabinet is a little heavier, which is, I'm glad it's not one I'm saying is the most portable, because it is portable. If you put some casters on the bottom of it, it'll be fine. When I was carrying it, I was like, man, if I had to carry this into a gig all the time, that would not be fun. Now, one really cool bass effect that this amp does, it has like a sub channel where it basically adds like an octave to your bass. And that's a really cool effect because I have an octave pedal sometimes I like to just put on and just jam and have fun with. That's really cool that you can do that just straight on the amp. Now, I probably would still use my pedal in a normal scenario, but this is just one of those extra features, just like, that's cool. You know, it's cool and just fun to play with. All right, so now let's hear what this bass amp sounds like. I'm gonna be using a Shure SM57 to get the tone from the bass amp so you guys can hear it accurately. I'm first gonna start off with playing the amp with a flat EQ. All right, now I'm gonna play with the EQ not engaged at all. All right, now I'm gonna play with the shape button engaged. And now I'm gonna do it with the dirt channel engaged so you can hear some of the drivey distortion. Now that we know what it sounds like, I'm gonna take it to my church, get it set up, and use it in a church service. Now the mix that I have is gonna be coming from my headphones that I had during service. But I will say, this bass amp really performed well. I definitely have to learn some more of how it works in this setting. I'm still learning some of the settings and different things like that. But once I started to dial it in, it actually started to sound pretty good. But it really has like a different, kind of more punchy tone that I actually kind of like, especially when I'm doing a lot of worship and even like some gospel things. It just kind of fills out that area really nice. Now the reason why I'm doing this video is because I know there's so many options out there when it comes to bass amps, especially ones for churches. And so what I wanted to do is basically show you guys all the different features and why they matter and why some of them are not a non-negotiable and why it doesn't matter as much. I hope today you learned something and I hope this has helped you. If you guys ever have any questions about buying a bass amp for church, they're even more stylized or different things like that, please let me know in the comments, and also let me know what church bass amp you guys use in the comments below as well. Now, if any of you guys are interested in this Ashdown Rootmaster III, it'll be linked in the description for you to check out. Now, if you haven't already and you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like and subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified when the newest videos are uploaded. Now, if you want to support this channel, there's a couple of ways you can. You can click and make a purchase to any of the links that are in my description below to where this channel will get a little commission to bring you more videos. And also check out my website, travisdykesmusic.com, where you can find practice tracks, gear, and a whole lot of other things that will help you as a musician. Now, if you're interested in a breakdown of some more gear, check out this video right here.